Let's jump into our list of 5 huge mistakes made by private investigators. Our first mistake revolves around surveillance and setting up properly. I think almost every surveillance PI will make this mistake from time to time. I have done this myself. I pull into the neighborhood, I find a nice shady tree to park under, so when it gets hot I'm protected from the heat, and I do not consider other surveillance positions. Now, when setting up your initial surveillance position, you should be considering a lot of other factors. What direction might your subject leave in? This is highly important. Always have an exit strategy. Your surveillance exit strategy is knowing how you can easily follow your subject out without getting burned by your subject or observed by all of the neighbors. You should also be looking at how easy it is for the subject to see you in your surveillance position. If the subject is even a little aware that they may be under surveillance, they will be looking for unknown vehicles. Telltale signs of surveillance vehicles, like vehicles with dark tinted windows parked under shade trees, or anything out of the ordinary. And of course, the biggest mistake for initial surveillance setups is to park right in front or directly across the street from the subject residence. Now, don't get me wrong, there are times when this is necessary, to be sure. I remember one case I had where several PIs had worked it with little to no success, and every PI had gotten burned on mobile surveillance. Now, when that case hit my desk, I was able to easily tell the client that we needed 2 investigators, but I also had to have a plan in mind to help justify using 2 investigators. I parked directly in front of the subject residence right across the street. I sat there completely blacked out. There was no way anybody could see inside my vehicle. I was also parked in full sun, and there was no easy way for me to stay cool during the full sun periods of the day. Now, it was early winter, so the temperatures were a little cool, but even in the middle of winter, if it's 35 degrees outside and you're in full sun all day, it will get near 100 degrees inside your car. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. I had the other PI position himself about 3 or 4 blocks away around the corner on another street where he could pick up the tail when the subject left the house. Then I could just sit there, get all of the video I needed when the subject was outside, and boy did I ever get a lot of video on that case. And when he left, I could radio ahead to the other PI, and then he could conduct mobile surveillance. I usually stayed in my position, so when the subject came back to his residence, I would be all set up and I could continue gathering video of him. So make sure that you consider all factors when looking at your initial surveillance setup positions. Now, another huge mistake that PIs do, and yes, I am guilty of this one too, is not looking at all individual counties, cities, and every place where a subject has lived before when they are conducting a comprehensive background check. There are varying levels of background checks, to be sure. A huge mistake that I have seen other PIs do, and I've done it myself, is just running people in the PI databases and running them on their State Bureau of Investigations and maybe the state court system. While you're going to get a lot of information doing that, it is, however, a long ways from being comprehensive. You need to take your reports and compile a list of every city, every county, and every state where your subject has lived as well. Then you need to check those records to see if there is anything that did not come up on your comp reports. PI database vendors are great places to get started, but you have to remember they are great places to get started. They are not the end-all, do-all, and while they may be comprehensive in nature, there is always more information that you can gather on your subject. Not all states' public records are created equal, folks, and not all data companies gather their information the same way. So if you are in Colorado, for example, and your subject resided in New York, you should be going to New York State as well as the county and the towns and the cities where he has lived to look for information on him. I have seen many times in the past where municipal and county records are not always in the state records. I have also seen many times where a record comes up on the state criminal history report but not on one of the PI database reports, and I have seen varying reports for the same subject across multiple databases. Here is another huge mistake that PIs make, and I for sure did this early on in my PI career. This mistake is undervaluing your services. It is so easy to try to compete with your competition on the price point, the lowest common denominator, the hourly rate. Now, almost all clients' first question to the PI on the phone is, what is your hourly rate? When I got started, I worked on the I will not be undersold method, and boy, was I ever busy. But I learned, folks, that busy is not always profitable. And I also learned that my investigation, regardless of my years of experience, had the same general value as any other investigator. Now, obviously, there are exceptions to this rule. I'm not saying that I can conduct a wrongful death investigation But if we are talking surveillance, for instance, if you are a rookie and you go out and you get the job done, you get the video, you get the money shot, you get the evidence the client needs to win their case, your surveillance is the same value as if a 20-year veteran conducted the surveillance and got the same results. Now, there may be some added benefit and experience for things such as giving testimony on the stand, but that added experience does not double the value of the work, in my opinion. So make sure you are not undervaluing your work, folks. You should be in the average price range, even if you are a new PI. Being the cheapest guy in town gets you the cheapest clients in town, folks. The next huge mistake that private investigators make affects the bottom line of your business as well. This is not charging for all of your work. I did this a lot too when I was first getting started. I told the client I could do the job for X dollars, and I got the job done. Then I had to write the reports, I had to edit the video, and I had a bunch of research time up front that I hadn't thought about. And then, when the job was done, I just let it slide like I was doing my client a big favor. Mr. Client, we ran a little over budget, but I am not going to charge you for that. That was probably the worst line that I ever used with a client. In this line of business, folks, especially dealing with private clients, you are not going to get a ton of repeat business in most cases. Sure, if you're working with attorneys, insurance clients, you're going to get repeat business, but not charging for all of the work conducted appears very unprofessional and can have other negative ramifications on your business. If you are on the stand and the other side discovers that you had conducted some free work, they will eat that up. What is the value of that free work, Mr. PI? If that portion of your work product had no value, does any of your work product have any value? Make sure you charge for it all. Your contract should have the retainer or the budget in it and a description of how it is all charged, as well as a statement saying that the client is responsible for all charges for work beyond the retainer amount. Now, the biggest and worst mistake a PI could ever do, in my humble opinion, is not answering the phone. I've discussed this many times, folks. If you don't answer the phone, you don't get the job. Many times, new PIs are very reluctant to answer the phone. I get it. Phone sales are tough, but not eating is even tougher. You will not sell the gig if you don't answer the phone. Most clients do not leave a message, or if they do, they just quickly move on to the next PI on their list. And the first one to answer the phone and close the sale gets to feed their family for another week. Let's face it, folks, for most private investigators, the phone is not ringing off the hook every day, all day long. It is a highly competitive world out there, and you have to do everything in your power to make it work to your advantage. And if you are a new PI, it is even tougher, folks. When the client gets to you on their list, they may have already called 3, 4, 10 other PIs. What will make them work with you instead of the other PIs? Thank you so much for supporting the PI Guide channel.